I'd like to help people tell the stories that they're living when they don't have the words to do that. There have been songwriters in my life who have helped me understand my own story. And I think that is a lot of why we write the songs that we write, is that sentiment there.
Hello, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Eric Chakowski. I'm one of the worship directors here at First United Methodist Church, Richardson. And with me every week is one of our pastors, Josh Fitzpatrick. How's it going, Josh?
I am doing well. Good to see you. Good to be here today.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It is May 22nd today, and we're getting into summer mode. Schools are ending. We're kind of rolling into some summer activities, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff here at the church coming up.
Most churches during the summertime kind of take a dip maybe in their activity. At First United Methodist Church Richardson, it's the opposite. This church just picks everything up to the next level. This is a busy, kind of crazy time in our ministry, and I'm excited to experience it for the first time, actually. I've got our 6-year-old signed up for almost every camp we could here at the church. We've got a lot of exciting activities. One thing we want to bring to attention to our listeners, one activity in particular, or event, is a Know Your Number workshop. If you've explored the Enneagram at all, or you've been interested in the Enneagram, this is the perfect opportunity to get into it. Joey Shuey is an Enneagram expert, and she will work through what the Enneagram is and help you discover what your Enneagram number is. It takes place here at our church on June 8th from 9 to 5. And for more details on that event in particular, you can visit our website, fumcr.com.
And we've had Joey on the podcast. She's just a wonderful person to talk to, but also incredibly wise and knowledgeable about the Enneagram. So that'll be a great day. And then we've just also got a ton of incredible events and camps and mission trips and vacation Bible camp and so much going on in the life of the church during the summer. So if you're local, we'd love for you to check out the website, go to the events page and see what's coming up.
And what we have coming up today is an amazing interview with some friends that Eric has known for a while, but are newer friends to me, musicians from Nashville who are just very vulnerable and real in the music they produce, and something that I've quickly become a fan of. On today's show, we have Jenny and Tyler.
Well, we are here with Nashville singer-songwriters Jenny and Tyler. Jenny and Tyler are a married couple and have toured all over the country performing and telling stories, and have written some incredibly poignant and just really deep faith-oriented songs, and then some other just really fun ones along the way. They've got 3 kids and 1 on the way, and we're so excited that they made the time to speak with us all the way from Nashville today. Jenny and Tyler, thanks for being with us.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
So good to hang out with you over the internet, Eric.
Over the internet.
Yes.
Awesome. So one of the things, to maybe set up some context a little bit for y'all in your relationship, I think one of the things that your listeners love the most is the way that you let people into your relationship through your stories and your songs. Would you guys just tell us how you met?
Sure.
Yeah. We met at the University of Delaware through the Baptist student ministry there. I was a freshman, Tyler was a sophomore, and we just started leading worship together and playing music at the student center, in the hallways, in the stairwells, actually, because the acoustics sounded awesome, and just kind of bonded through music that way. And yeah, started dating and backing each other up, and eventually we thought, hey, maybe we should be a band. So yeah, that's how we met.
So Eric was familiar with your music and obviously with you guys for a long time. I've been educating myself for the past several weeks and just loving what you put out. Now, it's my understanding that you've been together touring musically for over 10 years.
Yes.
And reading some of the bio and stuff on your website, you made a major decision at some point in your career to just drop everything and pursue music exclusively. What led to that decision? What is it about a career in music that that led you to that?
It actually wasn't as difficult as you might think it would be. I had just graduated. Jenny still had a semester left. And I was set up to work an outside sales position at a company that sells nuts and bolts. And I was doing an internship for them and realized that if I was going to go full time with them after college, it would leave very little room for music. So I was talking with Jenny during senior year last semester, and I think unofficially we made the decision that we wanted to give music a shot when I said no to full time for that job and yes to part time at Starbucks. So it's not like we gave up this great job with lots of financial security to do music. We were making enough at Starbucks, and Jenny had a part-time job and had a 1-bedroom apartment and just like no kids, very little expenses. And so music was like, let's just try this and see what happens. And if it works, cool. And if it doesn't, let's figure something else out.
Yeah, I think we were at a place where we probably would have regretted it if we didn't try it.
Yeah.
Tyler especially, I think, couldn't really imagine life without music being pretty central to it at that time anyway.
Yeah, at that time for sure.
So I think that's kind of changed over the years, but definitely when we were younger, it was a main focus, or we wanted it to be a main focus.
Yep.
So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And just Tyler's personality is very much like a risk-taking personality. So again, to him, it kind of felt like no big deal to him, I feel like. Maybe not no big deal, but
yeah, it didn't.
There was never any doubt in your mind that like it would be fine to just try it.
Yeah, it just seemed like an adventure. And we had health insurance through Starbucks. This was before Obamacare, and Jenny's got epilepsy. So basically, as long as we could cover rent and Jenny's medicine for epilepsy, I was like we got free food from Starbucks. I think our cell phones
benefits of the job.
Yeah, I think we were still like on a family plan.
Yeah, we were on Jenny's family plan, so I don't think we paid for cell phone. Our expenses were super low, so it was like let's just make it and see what happens.
And for some reason, Tyler has mellowed me out enough over the years that I thought, okay, sure.
So now I've got to ask. So Jenny, you were probably a little less convinced than Tyler on this. At what point did you go, oh yeah, okay, I'm glad we made this decision?
Well, I think after we did like this little tour, maybe 6 months after we moved to Nashville in 2009, and I'd been working at a little gift shop, and Tyler had been at Starbucks, and he quit Starbucks to focus on building up like a mailing list and online presence and booking the tour. And so we did this little tiny tour. And the idea was if we go out and we don't lose money, maybe we could try again. Maybe we can do a little tour again. And there was a lot of playing to 4 people in a coffee shop on that tour. But we learned how to actually perform and have a presence and speak from a stage. And, when we came back from that tour, we hadn't lost money. We'd been able to pay our rent and we'd had a lot of fun. So I think at that point I thought, okay, well, I think I went back to the gift shop for like a month maybe. And then we started traveling again and just never went back to that. And I thought, okay, this was a good decision. This was the right decision, at least for now. And we've kind of always come from a place of, if music starts to not work, we'll do something different. And I don't know what it would be necessarily, but we're not just like totally tied to this idea that it's all we could ever do. So I think that takes some of the pressure off too.
Yeah.
So I guess about a year into living in Nashville, I thought, okay, this was the right move.
So now, over 10 years later, you've been working together in this capacity. You've been married, several kids as well, beautiful girls. So I think a lot of people would find it difficult to work with their spouse in such an intimate setting as music can be and touring can be, and maintain a healthy marriage in the midst of that. So how do you guys make both of those things work?
Well, there's been a lot of tears there, and also compromise on both sides. Years ago, I thought that we really needed certain instruments in order to achieve a sound. And so I would ask Jenny to play the mandolin or the glockenspiel or the guitar live. And that's something that she really never wanted to do. And so over the past few years, I've gotten smarter and just allowed her to do what she wants to do, which is sing. And realizing that like it's actually better that way because she feels more free as an artist, I think, without being tied down to an instrument. But that's just one example. And that took years to happen.
Yeah.
We still can't really track vocals together.
Yeah, we can't.
Besides that, I feel like there aren't a whole lot of areas that are maybe off limits. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've learned over the years just what we need. Like I've learned what you need in order to thrive, and you've learned what I need to flourish as well, like within the band. And so if we can
just voice that and then really listen to each other and actually let the other person have what they need, then we're good. So
and I think as far as maintaining a healthy marriage while working together, we've really tried to have boundaries of, when we can talk about Jenny and Tyler, the band, and when we're just like
work,
the summers.
Work versus play. And also just maintaining a pretty strict schedule so that when we're at home, it's like, this is work time, this is personal time. Yeah, having those two separate, that delineation has been very, very helpful. And there have even been times where it's like, in a business sense, it makes sense to do some sort of work while abroad or while traveling. For example, going overseas to France or Italy or Hawaii. Like we went to these places and I was like, hey, babe, we could write off like this whole trip if we just play a couple shows, and she's insisted on keeping it pure and not doing any kind of business stuff. And those trips were so much better because of that.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I love that the metaphor of the band and working on what you need to do to ensure that each other thrive within the band is such a great analogy to marriage in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so if we can ask each other, well, what instrument do you like to play? What role do you like to play? Like, what is it that's going to make you thrive in your role on this team?
Yeah.
I love that works both ways.
Yes.
Totally, man.
And now tell me a little bit more about your music itself. So you write about Jesus, you also write about your kids, and then everything to Jenny's one-eyed cat. How would you describe your music? What inspires you to write it?
I think as far as what inspires us to write it, the idea is to like ask questions. I don't know that we provide many answers, but like ask questions about what we're seeing in the world or the relationships that we have, and hopefully bring hope and peace through the music. Would you agree with that?
I think that's some of the songs for sure. But then there are other songs like In Everything You Do.
Yeah, where it's just purely about...
It's based on our worldview, but it's our desire for our kids or our desire for our friends and family, kind of the longings of what we really want for those we love. And
so maybe it's kind of to encourage people to ask questions. And then I think it's also to help people know that they're really not alone in whatever it is that they're wrestling with or walking through, or in the questions that they might be afraid to ask. There's a song by this artist, Drew Holcomb, called Here We Go. And the line that I like the best is, music, it makes you feel good, makes you feel understood, like you're not alone. And I think that is a lot of why we write the songs that we write, is that sentiment there. I'd like to help people tell the stories that they're living when they don't have the words to do that. There have been songwriters in my life who have helped me understand my own story. And I think I'd like to be that for people if I can.
Well, it totally makes sense because you can do that in grief and in sorrow and life experience, but you can also do it in love songs. So I noticed that as I'm catching up and listening to some music, you've got some great love songs.
Thanks.
And when you give words when words are not available, I can just play a love song for my wife and say, hey, listen to this song. They say it way better than I would.
That's sweet.
For sure.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You're so welcome, man. Some of it for me is a way to challenge myself and the world to look at what we're doing and what we believe and see if it is good and lines up with the heart of God. So, yeah, we've written some justice related songs, and just working on a song today for our patrons. The tag is I Want to Make You Lose Your Religion. And it's about sort of like the way Jesus addressed the Pharisees, their religious spirit, that they had lost sight of the heart of God and they were following their own traditions and neglecting justice and the love of God. And so drawing a lot from Luke chapter 11 and looking at what true religion is according to James 1:27, that it's widows and orphans and keeping oneself unstained by the world. So yeah, like I said, it's just a way to challenge myself and others to live according to what is true and good and beautiful.
So one of the things that I've quickly begun to love about your music is how vulnerable you are, how much insight into your own lives you provide. We live in a society that it promotes this idea of being the best version of ourselves. How do you encourage your listeners to seek and be intentional about that vulnerability in the same way that you do with your music? And do you find it difficult, or is this something that comes naturally to you, or is it a challenge as well?
For me, it's just something that if I don't do it, I feel terrible. So I would say there is like some kind of intrinsic natural thing in me. At the same time, I've gone much of my life hiding, not speaking the truth. And I think it's like a revolt against that. I've experienced the destruction of that, of not being vulnerable. One of the funnier ways we encourage people to do that is to take like really low angle selfies on Instagram and just post as many, like the ugliest angle of yourself. But
You do that. I don't do that.
I do that.
I'm like, no.
That's where she draws a line.
But no, what would you say,
I
Jenny?
would say that because for us, so much of songwriting is just the way that we process life. You just kind of can't help but be vulnerable, because the bottom line is that a lot of life is just not easy. A lot of it is hard, and there's still a beauty in it, but you can't sugarcoat everything. And because we process life that way, I think it's just naturally going to come into songwriting. Sometimes when we play shows, at some point we'll say something like, all right, it's time for a happier song. And it's not that all the songs are sad or that we're sad people necessarily. It's just you find yourself writing and being introspective during those moments where you have questions or, where you're walking through something difficult. So I think that just naturally happens. But we really do try to be intentional about it, especially on social media. I've talked a lot recently about just struggling with anxiety and PTSD, and I've seen a lot of impact from speaking about that, just connecting with people who have felt alone in their own, journey with that. So I think we have a platform. It's very small, but we would like to use it in a purposeful way.
Yeah. Feels like a responsibility.
Yeah.
But also something that if we don't do it, it's destructive.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
For us anyway.
For us.
So you've also, in the midst of a lot of music work, you've had some partnerships with some incredible nonprofits over the years. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done with them or some of the organizations that you guys have worked with?
Yeah, it's primarily International Justice Mission, IJM for short, based out of DC area, but actually they have headquarters in various parts of the world to fight modern slavery and more generally the oppression of the poor. It's a group of lawyers and investigators and social workers. They go into, in many cases, life and death situations to bring people out of trafficking, really in two forms: the forced labor trafficking, like a brick kiln or a rice mill or a brick factory, or in the fishing industry, for example. And the other one is the sex industry. So yeah, partnering with them started with a cover of a Simon and Garfunkel song about 7 or 8 years ago. We covered The Sound of Silence because we love that song and wanted to play it live. And we were thinking about what to do with the song. And both of us separately what kind of popped up into our heads was like, let's have this be a benefit and an awareness thing for IJM. And it was really cool because it was when people still downloaded music. So it got released and human trafficking wasn't as on people's radar. And so it at the time seemed like, man, this is a really good way to, like, this gives us an excuse to talk about it at shows, online. And this song, The Sound of Silence, is kind of the perfect song to introduce this topic because it's about, well, it's hard to know exactly what it's about, but it's got this mystery and it's referencing darkness and streetlights and idolatry and topics that you don't hear in modern pop music. So that's where it started. And the song raised a bunch of money. And it was really cool because artists and people got behind it. And that caused us to do this For Freedom EP of a bunch of cover songs from our childhood that we loved. And we went on tour with that. And then we got to partner with IJM for some of their benefit concerts. And it just has been this incredible relationship for, really those 7 or 8 years since that cover.
Yeah. And as our life has changed and just touring has become like just a little more complicated with kids, I think that speaking about IJM and giving people the opportunity to get involved with their work at our shows has really been something that kind of keeps us going in a way, because it feels like the shows are about a lot more than just us making music.
Yeah.
And even if our impact is small, there's still an impact being made. And it's really encouraging too to see people get excited about the work that God is doing through IJM and just want to come alongside us and be a part of it. I think it just adds a whole purpose to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so fulfilling for any of us to find an intersection between our passion and a cause that we're really excited about.
Yeah.
So what great work you guys are doing. So for our listeners, if any of our listeners wanted to get involved with IJM, what are the sorts of things that can be done, or where can they find out more information?
Yeah. So we encourage folks to do a couple things if they want to. The first is to pray. And if you Google IJM Pray, you can sign up for this prayer email they send out every week, which has specific requests from the field. For example, it'll say these 50 people were rescued from a brick kiln and they just got their citizenship in India. Let's thank God for that. Or this girl is about to testify against her trafficker. Let's pray for her, for courage. It's just cool because that prayer email kind of keeps it on your radar. I think it's very common to get zealous about a cause for a time, but then keeping it up is difficult with the busyness of life, you know? The second way we do ask people to get involved is to become a freedom partner, which is a financial thing. It's $24 or more a month, and you can just Google IJM Freedom Partner. All the money from that goes toward rescue operations. Each rescue operation takes quite a lot of training and manpower and, like I mentioned before, social work, and then prosecution of offenders and traffickers and such. It's incredible that $24 a month, which is probably our smallest bill, can have that kind of impact. So we tell people, man, if you can do it, it's worth it. And we don't get anything out of it other than the joy of knowing that people are getting to partner with really what God is doing through IJM. We don't want to glorify an organization. We want to glorify the God who loves people to be free, and he wants physical and emotional and spiritual freedom for people. And he did that through Jesus on the cross. So it's a joy for us to see people be a part of that.
So I love that your music, your spirit, just your personalities are so You come across very selfless. That's evident in what you've just said. I want to give you a moment to be selfish.
It's all a show, man.
That's right.
We rehearse these like selfless lines before interviews. We're like,
yeah, that's good.
I-
You have them all
okay.
written out.
There's that vulnerability coming out.
Scripted.
Yeah.
no.
Scripted vulnerability.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners where they can go to access your music and your website as well?
Yeah. So our website is just jennyandtyler.com. And then on social media, we're most active on Instagram, I would say.
Yep.
And we're just Jenny and Tyler. The "and" is spelled out. And then we're on Spotify and on iTunes and like all those places. And we've been making a lot of videos. So that's a way to hear the music and just see what we're about, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And is One-Eyed Cat your most popular song?
No.
It's not.
Okay.
But I mean, it is the song that we can't get away from.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like that's true.
No, we didn't play it on this past tour at all.
At all?
No.
Oh, you know why, though? It was because I was so sick, and so we didn't take any requests.
Oh, that's right.
Because we were
That's
afraid
right.
that people would request a song
Yeah.
that I was like, no, I'm not capable of singing that right now.
That's true.
But
we
if we
probably
take
would've played it.
requests at shows,
Yeah.
we always get that song.
Pretty much.
That's awesome.
Always, yeah.
Hey, so we've got one last question that we ask each of our guests, and that is this. Up to this point in your life, what is one thing you wish someone would have told you?
I wish that someone would have told me that the threes are a passing, fleeting year in a child's life. And that it's totally normal for kids to do insane things because it passes.
I
Yeah.
have a 3-year-old right now.
Oh man, it's just normal, man. You'll get through it. It's a phase. It's a phase, you know? And oh my goodness, I really wish someone had told me that. Like, we have had children that have like hit and kicked and bit and screamed and done very obscene things that we should not mention. And
They're fine now.
they're fine now. Yep. Now,
Totally normal.
Yep.
It's just a thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so much of life these days is just about like, motherhood and parenthood. And I think I wish someone had told me just how challenging motherhood would be and that you're not alone in it. And I wish someone had said, like, you need people. And I think, that would have applied to my whole life too. I'm just not a very social person. And I just wish maybe that someone had said to me early on, like, you would really benefit from actual, real community. Because I think it took me a long time, especially as an adult, to really go for that. And there's been a lot of beauty in that.
Well, and hopefully that's a role that the church can play
Yeah.
in providing authentic Christian community, even for folks that may not think they want to be around people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time today and just sharing a little bit about your stories and your journey to where you are today. It's been such a pleasure catching up, and I know our listeners will be excited to hear from you as well. So thanks for the time today, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for asking these questions, guys. They were very well thought out, and really appreciate you listening and not having it feel like an interview as much as a conversation. So
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Jenny said something that I wonder if a lot of us relate to in the reasons that we connect so strongly to music, in that one of her motivations for writing songs was that she wanted to give words to emotions and experiences that people have that they may not have words for themselves, that they may not be able to express in their own language. And I recently heard a sermon preached by one of the pastors at our church during a funeral, and he mentioned a similar sentiment around the Psalms. Specifically, he referenced Psalm 23, which is a really popular scripture during funerals because of the language and the comfort that it brings. Many of you may know that the Psalms are actually songs that were written to be sung as songs of praise, songs of comfort. And so To reference Psalm 23, this particular pastor talked about how the language used in Psalm 23 gives us language when we don't have language ourselves to express our emotion, our grief, and our desire for comfort.
So we want to leave you today with that psalm. This is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. If you like the podcast, please feel free to share it, go online and leave a comment, or give us a rating so that others might hear about us. We've got a new episode coming out every Wednesday, so make sure you also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify so you don't miss our next episode. If you want to find out more about First United Methodist Church Richardson, you can find us online at fumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Jenny and Tyler for joining us this week, and make sure you tune in next Wednesday when we have a conversation with Joe Stollard. Have a great week.